If your kid ever got lost in the woods, would they know what to do first? I teach my kids a simple rule that's easy to remember, and it could literally save their life. It's called the rule of threes, and how I teach it depends on how old they are. So today in this video, I'm going to talk through what the rule of threes are, why they're important, and then I have some age-based strategies that you can use for teaching this to your kids. Okay, so what is the rule of threes? Basically, the rule of threes is a survival rule to help you know what to prioritize and focus on first in a survival situation. So I'm going to dive deeper into each of these in a minute, but high level, here's what they are. 3 minutes without air, 3 hours without shelter, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. And there's actually a lesser known fifth rule, 3 months without companionship. So would your kid know the priorities? I would bet that most kids would think about food first, right? But that's actually the lowest thing to prioritize. So here's a real world example of this. I have a personal connection to why this is important to teach your kids. When I was in high school, I went on a backpacking trip with a bunch of other teens that was led by a few brave dads. And while we were out on that trip, I had actually gone off to do my duty in the woods. And so I walked a ways away from camp. I didn't want to get into the way of where the girls area was or anything like that. And basically all I had with me was my poop kit. And somehow I got lost coming back into camp and went around too far, got myself turned around, couldn't find my way back to camp. Now, I hadn't heard of the rule of threes before this. And so after I had been out there for maybe an hour, naturally, I panicked. And all these thoughts started going through my head. Basically, all I could think about were the Bear Grylls shows that I had seen. I started thinking oh, I'm gonna have to find me some berries or maybe some squirrels. But as I'm thinking these thoughts, it started raining on me and I got wet and I kept moving, which got me even more lost. Finally, I hunkered down under a tree during the thunderstorm. Luckily, the rain passed within a couple hours. And then after that, some other hikers heard me yelling and we were able to reunite with my group. So it ended up being okay, but this could have turned into a life-threatening event. If the rain had kept on coming and I was already cold and wet and it continued to rain all night, I could have gotten hypothermic out there. But if I'd have known the rule of threes, I would have known what to do first. Shelter. Like I said, I didn't have much with me, but I would have been able to get some pine branches or something to make a basic shelter out of, or at the very least to have known to stay out of the rain as much as possible and to have hunkered down under a tree from the get-go. So let's take a closer look at each rule. There's nothing specific about these having to be exactly 3. All of them are a little bit variable. It's just meant to be an approximation and an easy way to remember what the priorities are. Okay, so first off, 3 minutes without air is the most immediate need. And this might seem obvious or intuitive, like don't stay underwater for 3 minutes. But it's not just about breathing. In emergencies, this could mean choking or falling into cold water or even just panicking and hyperventilating. Teaching your kid to stay calm and breathe slowly can actually be more important than you might think. Okay, next one, 3 hours without shelter. So this guideline requires some careful interpretation, especially when teaching it to children. The 3-hour time frame applies specifically to extreme conditions, such as severe cold, intense heat, or exposure to the elements like a thunderstorm that could cause hypothermia or hyperthermia. In moderate conditions, survival without shelter obviously extends much longer than 3 hours. So putting this in context is crucial for understanding when you're teaching this to your kids. Basically, you want them to know that exposure to cold, heat, and rain can turn dangerous really fast. And that's especially true for kids. Having a basic tarp, knowing how to block the wind, or like I said, even just staying dry can literally be a lifesaver. And that's why shelter first beats food every time. Okay, so let's talk about 3 days without water. The 3-day water guideline represents one of the most variable aspects of the rules of 3. Being out on a hot day, exposed to the sun in intense heat, those kind of conditions can cause heat exhaustion really quickly, like within a matter of hours, and that could easily become a life-threatening situation. And on the other extreme, actually, the longest recorded survival without water amazingly reached 18 days. There was once a man in an Austrian prison who was forgotten about in his cell, and he went 18 days without food or water. This just demonstrates the wide range of human endurance and abilities under different circumstances. Next one, 3 weeks without food. So you can actually go surprisingly long without eating. So the lesson here is teach your kids not to panic if they're gonna miss a meal. The body is built for resilience. So prioritize shelter and water. The snacks can come later. And in fact, you should not eat food if you don't have access to water. And that's because digestion can actually speed up dehydration if you don't have water to supplement it. So even if you have snacks in your backpack, but you don't have water, save the snacks for later until you can secure some water. Okay, and the last one, 3 months without companionship. This one, it gets really interesting. Most people know the rule of threes as ending at food, but there's a less talked about fifth survival priority, and that's human connection. And I know this one may not be as much within your control in a survival situation. And while you may not necessarily die after 3 months of being alone, but there's some interesting stats that show that there actually could be irreversible harm done from these long periods of isolation. So I just thought it was interesting to share with you. There's some research that comes out of some solitary confinement studies in prisons that even after 72 hours in solitary, there begins to be a measurable cognitive decline in pattern recognition. And then 15 days is what the UN Mandela rules define as the threshold for irreversible psychological harm. And at 30 days, 85% of subjects develop hallucinatory experiences. And there's some Oregon prison studies that show at 90 days, there was permanent personality changes in 37% of inmates. Pretty fascinating stuff. There's also some natural data that came out of the pandemic that shows that after 21 days of isolation, there's a 200% increase in depression risk. After 60 days, there's a 450% increase in anxiety disorder occurrences. And then after 90 days in isolation, there's a 22% permanent cognitive impact. So I think this just goes to show why those alone shows that go 100 days are so difficult. Okay, so let's get into those age-based teaching strategies. I've got some good practical tips for kind of each age range, starting with ages 4 to 5. With kids this young, you can start to teach them the rule, but you want to keep it simple and fun and playful. They're not going to remember the list of survival rules, so instead, turn it into a game. Quiz them and ask them things like, if you were lost in the woods right now and it started to rain, what's the first thing that you should do? The goal is to help them start to be thinking in terms of staying warm and dry. You could do things like let them build a little fort or shelter in the backyard using sticks or even blankets. Repetition is your friend at this age, and make sure you keep it fun and not fearful. Another concept that's actually good to introduce at this age is the 3 minutes without air, because it's good to explain to them that if they're in a room that fills with smoke, they need to get out as fast as they can, because they only have a few minutes before they won't be able to breathe in the smoke anymore. Just make sure you keep it short, repeatable, and fun, so that way they're learning important things without even realizing it. And then moving up a little, once they get to about the ages of 6 or 7, then they're ready for the full rule of threes. They should be able to actually understand and remember the concept at this age. So you can walk them through each part and then talk about what matters most if something goes wrong. Like, if we were to get lost, would you rather have a granola bar or a warm place to sleep? You know, then they start to get it. And this is a key stage to teach them about hydration. Teach them how you come prepared to stay hydrated, whether that's just extra water in your pack, or if you're bringing a water filter or an ability to boil water, whatever the case is. Then as you get a little bit older, ages like 8 to 10, say, older kids around this age can take it a little bit further. You can actually like challenge them on a hike and say, what would you do if we got stuck here overnight? Kind of role play or create situations like that where they would have to figure it out. Let them actually try setting up a tarp or find water for you to drink, and start to have them explain the rule back to you so that they actually start to like own the ideas behind the rule. Kids at about ages 8 and up really benefit from hands-on practice, scenario-based learning, and one great trick is giving them the opportunity to teach younger kids or siblings what they know about this. One thing that could be cool to do at this age is that you could actually practice fasting with them and help them learn that the body is built for resilience. Once they get to this age, you could fast a meal or two with them. That way they can have that confidence and knowledge that they're going to be okay if they're in a situation where they don't have food available. It'll help them not to panic and remember the priorities. And then moving on up to preteens and teenagers, this is really where you want to get in depth on the why behind each of the rules. For example, for shelter, help them start to understand that your body loses heat in several different ways. You can talk through those. How convection occurs naturally through the movement of air or water around you, and how warmth can be transferred through touching something that is hot or cold. This could be the ground or another person, and also that how you lose body heat when you breathe or when you eat or drink cold things. Eating snow for water is a good example. Since you're essentially like putting ice inside your body, you're naturally reducing your temperature through conduction. Or you can talk through radiant heat from the sun or from sitting in front of a fire or reflecting the heat from a fire. Knowing these kind of concepts can help you and your child understand what kind of shelter is most effective in the situation that you find yourself in. I think one key concept here is understanding the importance of packing an emergency blanket with you and understanding how to use it. Actually, I think this could be a whole other video that I could make, and if you want to see that, comment below. That could be cool. For the rule on water, you want to let your teenagers be filtering their own water and making sure that they understand and know how to do that. On food, you can actually start to teach them how to bring proper snacks that include extra calorie dense food that could be used for survival if necessary. You could also start to teach them how to identify edible berries or plants, and also how to know what plants or mushrooms to avoid. So there's a lot of different ways you can take this. There is one big main takeaway though that I want to make sure you leave with. But before I get to that, the point of this isn't to scare or introduce fear about the dangers of survival. It's to give them confidence. And maintaining a positive mental attitude actually ranks as the first survival priority, even before addressing the physical needs. The psychological component is actually particularly crucial with children who might panic in a situation like this. Teaching children to stay calm and to think clearly actually represents the most important survival tool that you can give them. And it provides them applicable skills for numerous life situations beyond wilderness survival. This is why it's so important to teach this to your kids. When your kid knows what to do, they will stay calm, and that's going to become their compass for thinking even when you're not there. I challenge you, try it this week. Teach them the rule. Consider incorporating some specific activities that you can do together as a family, like building an emergency shelter in the backyard, or create a water collection system when it's raining. These kind of hands-on experiences are going to reinforce the theoretical knowledge that you're teaching them. It's going to help them build confidence and obviously create some family bonding opportunities. So don't forget, it's not about perfection, it's about being present. And if you're into building outdoor skills with your kids, this is just the beginning. Make sure to subscribe for some more dad-led adventures, lessons, and beautiful kid chaos. I'll see you out there.